Welcome back, scholars. Today we're studying A Clean, Well-Lighted Place by Ernest Hemingway. This is my favorite Hemingway story, by the way. You may read it and think, what's going on here? There's a lot implied that isn't necessarily obvious. That's because this is one of the finest examples of Hemingway's iceberg theory. Hemingway said of his writing, write on the principle of the iceberg. What you see is of an iceberg is what's floating above the water. But the vast portion of the iceberg is underneath the surface. It's the same way with the story, according to Hemingway. The text is the top of the iceberg. The subtext, what is implied by what is written, is the vast proportion of the story, the bigger part. Let's take a look at our text here. So it was very late, and everyone had left the cafe except an old man who sat in the shadow the leaves made against the electric light. In the daytime, the street was dusty, but in the night, the dew settled the dust, and the old man liked to sit late because it was deaf. And now it was night, and it was quiet, and he felt the difference. The two waiters inside the cafe knew that the old man was a little drunk. And while he was a good client, they knew that if he became too drunk, he would leave without paying, so they kept watch on him. Last week, he tried to commit suicide, one waiter said. Why? He was in despair. What about? Nothing. Okay. And that right there, that word nothing is key. The modernists lived in a world without God. It was Nietzsche, the philosopher, said, after Darwin, God is dead. And so what they had done is essentially they had removed God from the public sphere. They no longer believed in him. This is for a number of reasons. The horrors of World War I, when all of our greatest technologies were turned toward our self-destruction, and the fact that scientific advancements now explain what had been previously left to and described by the supernatural, the actions of God. So what happens when you lose something from society as large, as such a huge presence as God? Well, there's this huge vacuum, and there's this terrible loneliness. Because one thing we understood of God was he was always there, he was always watching. The modernist, now without him, tried to fill this vast, huge vacuum. They tried to fill it with drink, with partying, with appearance, public image in the case of F. Scott Fitzgerald. But nothing was ever quite enough. So there's this vast emptiness that needs to be filled. And it's a terrible, chaotic loneliness. And so we have this old man here at this cafe at late at night who has tried to kill himself because of his despair over loneliness and the emptiness of the universe. Okay. And so he says, how do you know it was nothing? He has plenty of money. Well, there you go. He's got plenty of money. He filled his life with enough cash there. It should suffice. But nothingness is what terrifies and causes him and drives him to despair. So they sat at the table that was close against the wall near the door of the cafe, and they looked at the terrace where the tables were all empty except for an old man sat in the shadow of the leaves of the tree that moved slightly in the wind. A girl and a soldier went by in the street, and the street light shone on the brass number on his collar, and the girl wore no head covering and hurried beside him. The guard will pick him up, one waiter said. What does it matter if he gets what he's after? He'd better get off the street now. The guard will get him. They went by 5 minutes ago. The old man sitting in the shadow rapped his saucer with his glass. The younger waiter went over to him. What do you want? The old man looked at him. Another brandy. You'll be drunk, the waiter said. And the old man looked at him, and the waiter went away. Okay. I'm going to pause here, too. And the girl and the soldier are significant, too. This is a soldier who's probably out after curfew, or certainly longer than he should be on leave. And so he says the guard will get him. That means the shore patrol, the MPs, And what is it about these two? What is significant about this couple? The reason they're in the story is they too are two people trying to escape the vast loneliness and the vast emptiness of the universe. This is very much a story about loneliness. Loneliness in the absence of God, loneliness of the modern condition. You see, the girl is likely a prostitute, as evidenced by the fact she's not wearing a hat. Ladies wear hats. And the fact that it's late and he's passing by. And the reason the guard would pick him up is he's not supposed to be out fraternizing, probably. So what these are two other people trying to escape, or at least forget the terrible loneliness of the universe. So we have the old man, and the soldier and the prostitute, and the old waiter. Why is the younger waiter not involved in this? Well, I'll tell you. Read on. The old man looked at him. Another brandy. You'll be drunk, the waiter said. The old man looked at him, and the waiter went away. He'll stay all night, his colleague said. I'm sleepy now. I never get into bed before 3 o'clock. He should have killed himself last week. The waiter took the brandy bottle from the other and another saucer from the counter inside the cafe and marched out to the old man's table. And he put down the saucer and poured the glass full of brandy. You should have killed yourself last week, he said to the deaf man. The old man motioned with his finger. A little more, he said. And the waiter poured on into the glass, and the brandy slopped over and ran down the stem of the top saucer of the pile. Thank you, the old man said. The waiter took the bottle back inside the cafe, and he sat down at the table with his colleague again. He's drunk now. He's drunk every night. What did he want to kill himself for? How should I know? How did he do it? He hung himself with a rope. Who cut him down? His knees. Why'd they do it? For fear of his soul. How much money has he got? He's got plenty. He must be 80 years old. Anyway, I think I should say he was 80. Okay. So that's significance there, too. As I said, the modernists are the ones that did away with God. And this is a godless universe, and it's a roaring emptiness, which, ironically, the old man cannot hear. But he knows its loneliness and its sadness. He has no children. He has just his niece to look after him. But no, remember when I said the modernists killed God? When you deconsecrate a church, the building is still there, and the trappings. Okay? And that's part of the modernist dilemma. You do away with God, but you have a society that has been shaped and molded by the belief in God. And that part doesn't go away so quickly. And his niece still holds on to her belief in the family. And so he is prevented in leaving this existence, this lonely, terrible existence, by the very beliefs that the modernists have rejected. Okay. So, continuing on. I wish you would go home. I never get to bed before 3 o'clock. What kind of hour is that to go to bed? He stays up because he likes it. He's lonely. I'm not lonely. I have a wife waiting in bed for me. He had a wife too once. A wife would be no good to him now. You can't tell. He might be better with a wife. His niece looks after him. You said she cut him down. I know. I wouldn't want to be that old. An old man is a nasty thing. Not always. This old man is clean. He drinks without spilling, even now, drunk. Look at him. I don't want to look at him. I wish he would go home. He has no regard for those of us who must work. The old man looked from his glass across the square and then over at the waiters. Another brandy, he said, pointing at his glass. The waiter, who was in a hurry, came over. Finished, he said, speaking with that omission of syntax stupid people employ when talking to drunk people or foreigners. No more tonight. Closed now. And this line is both funny and incredibly accurate, because why do we do that? Why do we talk to people who don't understand English with the sort of dropped diction as if the syntax of the English language is the problem? They're not going to understand you with perfect syntax. Why would they understand you if you start talking like a caveman or something? So, moving on. Another, said the old man. No, finished. The waiter wiped the edge of the table with a towel and shook his head. The old man stood up slowly and counted the saucers and took out a leather coin purse from his pocket and paid for the drinks, leaving a half peseta tip. And the waiter watched him go down the street, a very old man, walking unsteadily, but with dignity. Okay. And this is important. There is a thing called the Hemingway Code hero. The hero has to adhere to a certain set of standards, and certain beliefs, and certain behaviors. And you can be cruel, you can be dirty, you can be weak, but you must maintain your dignity. Right? So we see the old man walking down the streets. He's drunk, he is deaf, he is alone, but he has his dignity. Right? He walks with a certain air of dignity. This is your key for facing up against the evils and the horrors of the world. No matter what comes, you've got to hang on to your dignity. And that's why he mentions this about the old man walking down the street, drunk but with dignity. Why'd you let him stay and drink? Why didn't you let him stay and drink? The unhurried waiter asked. They were putting up the shutters. It's not 2:30. I want to go home to bed. What is an hour? More to me than to him. An hour is the same. You talk like an old man yourself. You can buy a bottle and drink at home. It's not the same. No, it's not, agreed the waiter with the wife. He did not wish to be unjust. He was only in a hurry. And I think we could probably sympathize with the young waiter, right? The young waiter wants to get home to bed with his wife. He's not trying to be mean. He's not even mean to the old man when he says, you should have hung yourself last week. Because the old deaf man can't hear him anyway. He just wants to go home. If you worked in the restaurant industry, you could probably understand this, right? The older waiter says, look, it's not the same drinking in a bodega. And he goes, yeah, you're right. Okay. Anyway, he says, and you, have you no fear of going home before your usual hour? Are you trying to insult me? No, hombre, only to make a joke. No, the waiter, who was in a hurry, said, rising and pulling down the metal shutters. I have confidence. I am all confidence. You have youth, confidence, and a job, the older waiter says. You have everything. And what do you lack? Everything but work. You have everything I have. No, I have never had confidence, and I am not young. Come on, stop talking nonsense and lock up. I'm of those who like to stay late at the cafe, the older waiter said. With all those who do not want to go to bed, with all those who need a light for the night. I want to go home and to bed. We are of two different kinds, the older waiter said. He was dressed to go home. It is not only a question of youth and confidence, although those things are very beautiful. Each night I'm reluctant to close up because there may be someone who needs the cafe. Hombre, there are bodegas open all night long. You do not understand. This is a clean and pleasant cafe. It is well lighted. The light is very good, and also now there are the shadows of leaves. Good night, said the younger waiter. Good night, said the other. Turning off the electric light, he continued the conversation with himself. It was the light, of course, but it is necessary that the place be clean and pleasant. You do not want music. Certainly you do not want music. Nor can you stand before a bar with dignity, although that is provided for these hours. Excuse me. What did he fear? It was not fear or dread. It was the nothing that he knew all too well. It was all a nothing, and man was a nothing too. It was only that, and light was all that was needed, and a certain cleanness and order. Some live in it and never felt it, but he knew it was all nada y pues nada, y nada y pues nada. Our nada, who art in nada, nada be thy name, thy kingdom nada, thy will be nada, and nada as in will be nada in nada, as it is in nada. Give us this nada, our daily nada, and nada us our nada, as we nada our nada, and nada us nada to nada, but deliver us from nada, pues nada. Hail nothing, full of nothing, nothing is with thee. He smiled and stood before a bar with a shining steam pressure coffee machine. Okay, what does all this mean? Well, the older waiter understands the emptiness of the universe, the nothingness, the belief that there's no meaning to any of it because there is no God and there are no consequences. There's nothing to live for and no one looking out for us. And for the modernists, this idea was terrifying. Postmodernists later on, they lean into it. They embrace it. But for the modernists, this was still new and horrifying. And so he maintains this clean, well-lighted cafe. He says, we are two different kinds of people, he says to the young waiter. And the young waiter can't understand this because he has a wife, he has a family, he has someone, has these distractions. But the older waiter, he understands loneliness. He understands the need for a place to escape to. Someplace clean and well lighted and orderly, where you can stand and sit alone, but with others. They're apart, but they're in their own bubble of loneliness, but they're not alone in it. He is kind of, shall we say, the innkeeper at an inn at the edge of darkness and chaos. Now, what is the deal with the light? What happened in the book of Genesis when God spoke? He said, the earth was without form and void, and the hand of God moved on the face of the darkness. And the first thing that is ever said, according to the book of Genesis, is, let there be light. What does light do? It establishes order. This was when God said, let there be light, he is establishing order on the face of chaos. And this clean, well-lighted cafe is a bulwark, a castle, a keep against the chaos and disorder of darkness. And that's why these denizens come here, these lonely folks skulking through the night, looking for succor and for relief from this terrible horror of life being meaningless. And he understands them. And we come down to what he calls what scholars refer to as the nada speech. Our nada who art in nada, nada be thy nada. Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. He's saying that religion is all or nothing. That there is nothing out there, nothing looking out for us. No one to take care of us. So, this prevailing attitude of the modernists, who had seen so many horrors of World War I, and believed that there must not be a God, because if there was one, he would have stopped us from doing all this. And so he has left the cafe, and he's gone to a bar. He stopped by, and the barman asks him, "What's yours?" And he says, "Nada." He's still continuing that monologue in his mind. And the barman says, "Otro loco más." Another crazy. "A little cup," said the waiter. The barman poured it for him. He says, "The light is very bright and pleasant, but the bar is unpolished," the waiter said. When he says this, he's not trying to insult the barman or the bar itself. He's just continuing his monologue about nothingness and his shelter from that protects people from it, or at least gives them some relief. The barman looked at him but did not answer. It was too late for conversation. He's not insulted, and the old waiter is not insulting the barman. It's just too late and too tiring, too tiresome for conversation. "You want another copita?" the barman asks. "A little cup" is what that means. No, thank you, said the waiter. He disliked bars and bodegas. A clean, well-lighted cafe was a very different thing. Now, without thinking further, he would go home to his room. He would lie in bed, and finally, with daylight, he would go to sleep. After all, he said to himself, it's probably only insomnia. Many must have it. Okay. And two significant things in this otherwise innocuous passage. Notice he's going home not to sleep, not in the darkness, but in the light. Because light has the power of pushing back darkness, and darkness represents chaos and formlessness and nothingness. You can't create dark, see, you can only take away light. And so you think of light as perhaps God, or the thing that creates order over chaos. And so he goes home to sleep in the night, and even then he's reaching out for something to push away the loneliness. He says, well, it's probably only insomnia. Many people must have it. Okay? This is a rationalization that makes the irrational bearable. You know what? It's not existential dread. It's insomnia. And I'm sure this is happening to a lot of people. I'm not alone in this. Okay. Wonderful story. One of my very favorites. Actually, my very favorite Hemingway story. James Joyce once remarked, Hemingway that is, has reduced the veil between literature and life, which is what every writer strives to do. Have you read A Clean, Well-Lighted Place? It's masterly. Indeed, it is one of the best short stories ever written. So, there you go. Explanation of Ernest Hemingway's A Clean, Well-Lighted Place. All right. So, I hope that was helpful to you, and I will see you in the